Our next talk will be by Krystian, so I think Adam will talk about hypotheses.
Exactly. So welcome again. Now we are gonna talk about collaboration through annotations using a hypothesis tool. So to start with, let's check the simple Google report. We have the table. We can observe some data presented in it. It's very clear to us. But if we scroll down to the bottom of the report, we may see that the author of the report provided some formula for generating the data. Yeah, and what we may observe by reading it, that there is a single mistake in terms of extracting decades. So we just, what do we do in order to improve the report? We just send a comment here. Everyone knows how to use it. This is very convenient way to collaborate on the documents by just commenting some parts of code or the report. Then we can even mention the author, and by the notification, the author fixes the report, either the analysis if this is wrong or the comments. But nobody does it. Like, you can never find the formula described in the Google report. That's why we usually use tool that is directly data-driven, in which we can just source the data, analyze the code using even, for example, R, and then render the report showing the data, the code for generating the data if we want. So such report can be seen here. So this is the same data. We can directly have the access to the code, and again, not reading the formula but the code itself, we can review it and see that there is the same mistake over there. So we mark the code and want to comment it the same way. Oops, not here. No. Small issues, but we're gonna do it. So we want to right-click and try to find a way to comment it. But there is no way, because this is a static document, and we definitely have no way to contribute while commenting the report. So how can we actually achieve it? How can we solve this and find a way to comment the deployed documents? We can achieve this with the hypothesis tool. This is the tool implemented by Hypothes company that allows you to introduce the annotation system to the online documents. It can be any kind of document, like mostly HTML based, but PDFs are also supported. So how can we actually implement this to our RMarkdown document? We put some effort to make it more accessible within our community with the Hypotheses R package that is already available on Quarto. So with the Hypotheses, you can easily inject the annotation tool to your online document. So here is the example of how such document can look like. If we mark some part of code in the version when Hypothesis is enabled, the tooltip will show up with the ability to add the annotation. So after we click it, first we will have to log in. So if we are using the public version of the Hypothesis, we will have to create an account so that the tool knows who we are. And then we can just start writing the comments. Yeah, please fix this. We can post to public, we can add some tags to our comment, and there are many helpful tools supported. So then we achieved almost the same as in Google report. If we respond to our comment, like if somebody else responds to our comment, we can then receive an email with the notification that somebody responded to our comment. So this is the way how we can do it with Hypotheses. And how can we apply this into RMarkdown? So there is actually one single function one single function for RMarkdown and Quarto. You can use hypothesis function with some configuration available in order to simply you can place it within an R chunk to enable the tool. Or if you're using Shiny, because you can also apply this to Shiny applications, you can just place it anywhere in the UI. For the Quarto, there is also a native support for hypotheses, but we found some advanced cases in which this approach works, but the standard native implementation in Quarto does not. This is mostly an advanced case when you want to configure some JavaScript events, like for example, what should happen with the sidebar when it opens, with the annotation sidebar when it opens. Yeah, but this is like advanced case, and it's up to you which solution you'd like to use. And more to that, if you're fond of not having many dependencies and you don't want to install the package that we provide, you can just simply provide 2 JavaScript lines of code with the configuration and so with the JS script that enables the annotation. But the hypothesis itself is not only the annotation tool, it's much more. So now the more important part will be described by Adam. Especially you may be interested if you want to have the hypothesis implemented inside your organization, like within your closed network. Adam, thanks.
So yeah, the hypothesis is not only like commenting system. So it's like open source solution developed by the public benefit corporation, and it's provided on BSD license, open source license. It can be self-hosted. So you can, for example, for the enterprise organization, it's possible to just have their own instance that will be like the organization will be the owner of all the annotation that it's done. But yeah, it's also providing the API service that it's wrap over the auth2 authentication. So it's really like easy to extend the possibility and add possibility to integrate with the different website and the tools. So the hypothesis allow to do really a lot of action, and mainly this what Krystian shows up, like the right sidebar. Everything what can be done in this client can be directly done on the API of the service that will be secure store in the backend. So we can, like, if we, for example, collaborate, we can also do all this action programmatically. So together with the hypothesis package, we also introduced the possibility to interact with the hypothesis API. So, but there is few different possibility to interact with the API. One is like just using the hypothesis package, but also you can use the RAPI client for using the open API specification. You can also use some different implementation. But to interact with the hypothesis API, there is 2 options. One of them is just going to the panel and generating your API token. So similar to the just API token on POSIT Cloud or like another API. Or the second way, this is how the client is using. So it's just authorized with the auth to the server and using this access token to interact with the API. So the API implementing almost all possibilities that are implemented in the hypothesis. So with the hypothesis package, you can do whatever you want. And now I just wanted to show what you can, for example, do with that. So if we load the hypothesis package, we can, for example, search the annotation. And there is a lot of different options to search and annotation. And one of them is, for example, wildcard URL. So we can get the annotation that it's linked to, for example, one of the page or all the pages that are the of the root domain. And with this package, we can also interact with this hypothesis that was created on the website. So we can just get the annotation ID and, for example, flag the annotation or one of the other option that will be shown in a moment. And here we are just getting the annotation that was created. So we can, for example, update this annotation or send the information to flag the annotation. But one of the other possibilities is, for example, programmatically answer to some other annotation. So we can create another annotation that is a reference to the existing annotation. So everything what the user can really do, doing like commenting the Markdown documents, everything can be done the same in the from the RStudio or just with the API calls. And here we just create this annotation. And as you can see on the hypothesis, we got the notification on the WebSocket that there is new information in the hypothesis. So you can see that this comment was added to this discussion. Yeah, so the hypothesis also implementing the support for the RSS stream. So we can automate a lot of our actions that it's done in the hypothesis. So if someone comments, we can just track this and looking for answer. So there is a lot of tools for implementing this kind of automation. Some of them are like public. So for example, EFTTT, like, so when the new annotation shows up in RRS, we get the email, or there is Zapier, we can, for example, send the channel message to Slack or create the Jira tickets using, like, for example, Microsoft Power Automate. Maybe this is a solution more for enterprise, but for more technical user and, for example, the app developer really easy is using the POSIX Connect scheduler. So we can just interact with the API, get the information about annotation and, for example, answer them. Or one of the examples that people can come to us and ask, okay, we will add, for example, the hypothesis to our documentation to allow user to comments and, for example, ask question and give the feedback. But we don't want to track everything. So one of the solutions is, for example, is using the runner. So it can be like GitHub action or other runner that will track if any annotation shows up on the pkgdown, and it can create the issue on, for example, on GitHub or GitLab. So this is one of the nicest solution that we can use the hypothesis, but still have like track everything in one place. The hypothesis instance allow to be self-hosted. So there is a lot of possibility to build the infrastructure on the top of that. The hypothesis service is really good quality. It has really good architectural decision, that all the architectural decision that was documented in architecture records. And we have the backend service. So the hypothesis itself, it's built with the blocks. So it's using the different services like RabbitMQ or Postgres database or the Elasticsearch. So we can really easy scale, for example, infrastructure using the AWS to use the management service. So with this, We also have the support for the proxy authentication. So if we, for example, add the layer of authorization, like OAuth to single sign-on integration, we can just pass this information to Hypothes.is and just have like integrated with the enterprise network. Yeah, if like an enterprise need the support, probably can also ask for help from the Annotation Unlimited Public Benefits Corporation, that they are hosting the public version of the Hypothes.is. So this is like more for the social collaboration. So if the research are like the study are open, you can use the public instance, but for the internal and for the enterprise, it's really recommended to use the private one. We're still working on some structurize the process of like managing groups and other things in the Hypothes.is, but most of the work are already done, and the both solutions are possible. So using this commenting system in the web, internally in an enterprise organization, or externally as public infrastructure. Yeah, what else? I just tell that the Hypothes.is itself, it's a really big organization that have a lot of tools. So we have, for example, the BIA, we have the browser extension. So the browser extension can be used to like comments almost on everything and collaborate with others. We have a lot of possibility to also embed this Hypothes.is into some product that's we want to collect the feedback or just allow the collaboration without developing some extra tools or just developing the putting extra efforts to commenting on the PDFs or something like that. And also what is really nice, the Hypothes.is implementing the full OAuth to workflow. So we have like the Hypothes.is is a provider, and it's allowed to, for example, building the totally custom client that will just interact with the API. So if someone wants to build really small tool that will be collecting the feedback from the Shiny application or from some website, it's possible to do. So I just will enable annotation and give it a try. There is really easy solution to use the Hypothes.is package to just enable this in your documents. There is native support for the Quarto. And yeah, that's all from us.
Thanks, both, for the nice presentation. Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, very nice presentation. I was wondering, I've never heard of Hypothes before, but it reminded me of Notion actually. And I was wondering, have you ever tried to do the same thing with Notion, or did you ever use this Notion? I know in some companies it's quite popular because I think it would do pretty much the same. I was just trying to Google a bit if people have maybe.
Yeah, I haven't heard about this solution. So
I was just wondering because it's
you have to ask the people that made the research for this tool, yeah, and get the information actually why they decided to choose Hypothes, but currently we don't know the answer.
Yeah. I just out of curiosity. Thanks.
Any further questions? Maybe let's start with Kelly.
I wonder, you showed that the use hypothesis function that you include in the RMarkdown or Quarto document to add some JavaScript. But from what I remember, you could also use hypothesis on any website.
yes.
So what do you gain by actually running this use hypothesis function?
This is actually to the people that doesn't know HTML actually, because many people just, I mean the case when somebody got used to the RMarkdown workflow, and so okay, so you can attach this to any website, but you can attach it by some specific ways, like for example modifying the HTML structure by attaching the dependencies.
Okay.
strip the dependencies.
I remember installing a Firefox add-on actually. So that's what happened on my machine. So you either install the add-on in the browser or you enable this for specific documents.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so
You can be very explicit to what website you want to have this annotation system turned on.
yeah, so if you have the browser extension, you can enable this everywhere, like on every website. But with, for example, use like the Hypothes package, you can enable this on specific website. So even if the user do not have the extension, the Hypothes will work in this case.
And one more case is that thanks to that, we can predefine the specific configuration for the organization. We have already this implemented. Then, in order to skip this part to the users, to place this URL here, place this URL here in the use hypothesis function, we can just write our own wrapper.
Yeah, question in the back there.
Can I ask 2 questions?
Yeah.
So, so basically, like in a nutshell, from what I saw, it's like you can annotate things, right?
Yes.
So, like the question I would ask from my managers and so on, convince me to use Hypothesis instead of GitHub, sorry, because on GitHub I can also do that, and in fact it's creating a PR, adding comments and so on. It's like, and essentially it's the same thing.
Actually, no, because in order, if you have the URL only to the rendered report, then you would sometimes have troubles finding the source code of this report. You then need to directly specify where is it stored. Or to that, if I remember correctly, for GitHub or GitLab, you cannot comment the code directly. You need to commit the increment for the commit or the pull requests, I think.
This is one of the approach that, of course, we can use GitHub or GitLab. This is, I think, good approach. But very often the hypothesis can be used for collaborative research. So it can use on like PDF documents. So every PDF has their own fingerprint. So for example, even if someone opened the PDF locally and use the hypothesis, it can also share the same annotation on the same PDF with other people that's using this PDF, and this is in real time. And yeah, what else? It's also enable the possibility to give and collect the feedback from not technical people. So not everyone using the GitHub or GitLab. So if we, for example, sending some documents to the stakeholders, it's really like we can get instant feedback using the hypothesis.
So my second question,
Sorry.
quick one, very nasty one from pharma. Would you be confident enough to deploy it on on your own intranet? And for example, when you get CSR packages coming on, and with the more data and so on, would you be confident enough to create a report that would later on be, for example, shared around among the stakeholders with the hypotheses? I'm just curious about validating so that the data doesn't get outside, because it's all about paranoia, within the big companies.
So this is that we presenting the hypothesis. So we just created the open source version of this package, but internally we have the Roche hypothesis that it's pointing only to the private instance. Okay. So we have the internal self-hosted instance in Roche, and it's hosted on AWS infrastructure. So it's not going somewhere else. It's not sent to the internet.
Under file.
So I just have a follow-up question to that. So I can directly use that Roche version right now. There's no limit on the confidentiality level of the report.
Yes. Of course, we can. Currently, the hypothesis is not perfect service. So, for example, you do not have possibility to integrate with the LDAP groups now. But mostly, you can create the group if you want really to be sure that this will not go public in the Roche corporate network. You can just create the groups with 5 people that can work together. Yes, see all the annotation. Also, the annotation, it's just saving some small text. So this is used like using the different methods to find the place where its annotations should disappear in the HTML documents. So it's like fuzzy searching, fuzzy unhorting for getting this position. Yeah. And also like the hypothesis infrastructure is really good, in my opinion, from the perspective of the software developer, and they're still planning to adding the new features. And I think because there is also the standard that probably will shows up in next 1 or 2 years, that also will apply into the hypothesis. So in my opinion, it will be the standard in the future for the annotation.
They currently have more than 3 million users, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, maybe not user, but the annotation. Mostly they are working closely with the university for getting the feedback from the students and work, but they're trying to also use this as a research across the open science and not only.
So maybe just one quick comment. So why we prioritize this within Roche. So about 7 years ago, we switched all of our real world evidence studies to be using RMarkdown, which meant we had HTML outputs. And I guess connecting to some of the questions here, you've got clinical scientists, you've got people from Access and that, they have never seen code before, probably. So you want them to be able to interact with your documents, because now your studies outputs are all HTML. So it allowed them to go in and make comments and stuff like that. And it was about 6 years of us not being able to help them. They had this HTML document, which was much more annoying to work with than a Google Doc. But now they're able to go in and make comments, and I think that's been a really good shift. And maybe my question, so with the Shiny apps, how stable is this? If you make changes to your Shiny apps, how often do you see it doesn't find the comments anymore, or the comments go in the wrong place? And also what happens? If you change your document, does the...
So yeah, this is maybe...
It is shown as orphan?
Yeah, so for example here, when we see annotation and the page notes, we also see some new columns that's telling orphans. So this is annotation that couldn't not be linked. But mostly if it is work that if we cannot find the text, then then we cannot position the annotation in the full document.
So they are still linked to the document, but we don't know to which part.
Yeah, but they are somehow guessing the position and how the previous position of the block of text that cannot be found anymore is still highlighted, I think.
Yeah, we're still looking for the different approach, how we can just have the bigger impact with the hypothesis. So if you have an idea or any place that you see that it's possible to integrate, then you can reach me, Krystian.
If I may to add about deleting these comments, the standard behavior for Google Docs is that the comment is completely removed here. So I think Hypothes even chose the way.
Okay, then, originally, I'm not talking about the public thing, not the company within, where I don't have a problem. But if you say everybody who installs this browser extension, as Kirill, can comment on any web document, that means that it's stored with some hypothesis public server, all this information, and only people who also have installed either the app or web browser, they see the comments. So it's the community of people who use hypotheses who can see each other and nobody else.
Exactly.
Okay, that was just my initial question.
Yeah, but of course, if, for example, the developer wants to use the hypothesis for example, on
then they can
some
add
documents,
this JavaScript that you mentioned.
Yeah, so it will be accessible for everyone. So if we go...
99% or 99.99% of web documents don't have this part, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Sure, and I mean, in the interest of time, I mean, just let's have one more question, and then we can still end a little bit early. So,
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what happens if you have a document which is maybe access controlled, and then is there a risk that someone will read that the comments are not properly access controlled? So the document is private, and but discussions are visible to users who are not supposed to see them.
Yeah, there is always like this kind of risks. So we're trying to mitigate these risks. So we, for example, now working on some integration with one of the service. And the hypothesis there will be really limited. So it will be available for the user, but for example, it will not be allowed to push on this page, put the public comments. It will be only allowed to specific groups, but we still structurize this process of like how the access should be managed in this kind of places. Yeah.
Because if, for example, you use Google authentication everywhere, then you can know which person has access to each document, and same way you can enable the annotations, like show them or not. Yeah.
What we also, for example, done with the case on a Bennett hypothesis. So, for example, it's possible to comment on the PDF documents, but it's only possible with the PDF.js library. So, for example, in the Google Chrome, we do not have PDF.js because PDF.js is only part of the Firefox. So we like force the using the OAuth 2 to authorize to, for example, to Google Drive, then we can get the direct access to the PDF without the course like cross-origin sharing policy. So there is so many technical details, but we're trying to make like a lot of tools for people that will be really easy to start annotating. Yeah. And if you want to try, if you go to the hypothesis package, you can go to the pkgdown documentation, and here it's available. You can see how it works for example, with the pkgdown, so the documentation of the R package. So we can just immediately collect the feedback about some documentation. Yeah. And a lot of people also like writing the Quarto or pkgdown documentation that are not strictly connected with IB development. It's only, for example, connected just with the documentation, how to get access to something. So with the hypothesis, we can collecting the feedback from this user that are not technical.
It can be a way of documentation as well.
Another questions?
Sure.